It is Wednesday today, the middle of the week, and we're going to jump into yet again another Transformer Slag podcast Patreon listener question. Once again, if you want to be part of the Transformer Slag podcast, help support the podcast, let us know we're doing a half-decent job here in the Transformer world, keeping you educated, entertained, and informed in everything going on in our hobby day-to-day, week-to-month, year-to-year. What does it get you if you join the Transformer Slag podcast Patreon? Well, get your name in the end credit scroll at the end of every segment, access to our exclusive Discord where we share lore, share deals, and you save money on your hobby being part of that Discord, let me tell you. And of course, depending on what tier, you get access to some little stuff in the mail, you get some little gifts that we might do once in a while, we do giveaways that you'll get access to, and of course, depending on what tier, you might be able to ask the Patreon listener question. We have a Patreon listener question from the Twins Corner. And the Twins Corner wants to know, with this Patreon listener question is, what are the chances, in your opinion, that Hasbro releases the two combiners from Beast Wars of Tripredacus and Magnaboss into their Beast Wars vintage reissue line? Inflation considered, would you say that they would be released cheaper than in stores compared to the secondary market or compared to their original figure prices? And with buying Beast Wars vintage figures today, what is the best way to seek out those original releases and not get scammed by buyers trying to pass them off as the originals? For example, what would be the easiest way for me to get Cybershark or K9 compared to their vintage line versions, and what is different about them? Thanks for all that you do, Cobra and Delta, the Twins Corner. Well, thank you, Cobra and Delta, with the question. I'm glad you asked this because this is something that I've been paying very close attention to with every single release. As someone who buys and sells Transformers like crazy, it's very important information. I actually talked about this not too long ago with one of the guys who runs TFU.info, who is probably the best place really to see each individual figure and know about what is the little differences in the history. So first, to answer the first part of your question, would Tripredacus and Magnaboss be reissued? It's a possibility. I mean, it's gotten to this point now that they're willing to do even characters that don't have recognition value from the television show. When we looked at the beginning of the Beast Wars reissue line, it was Rat Trap, it was Cheetor, it was Optimus Primal and Megatron, and Scorponok. And even in the early 2022 releases, we saw Tigatron. So it was like, okay, they're going with the show characters. But now we have Wolffang, now we have Retrax, that's a weird one, and Iguanus. So it looks like they're willing to even do non-show characters if they feel that the mold is available, if the trademark is available, and they could put it out there. So guys like Magnaboss and Tripredacus, for sure those trademarks should be available in some shape or form, at least on the case of Magnaboss, because you're talking Ironhide, Prowl, Silverbolt. Those are easy names to get because they already have them. Tripredacus, you got Ramhorn, so they definitely got that. C-Clamp and Cicada Con, those ones might be the little more difficult ones, but at the end of the day, I could see them from a trademark standpoint happening. It's just a matter of, do they want to do it? I mean, I would like it if they did it, because both of those figures today, like you asked the question number one, compared to their original MSRP. Well, those guys were Ultra Class. Ultra Class's original MSRP was $19.99 back in 1996-97 when those guys came out. So even with inflation, you're talking, maybe like we're talking $31 today with inflation. But even then, we already saw what Optimus Primal. Optimus Primal is also an Ultra Class, and his figure was $50. So if they do Magnaboss and Tripredacus, they'll probably be $50. Maybe they'll figure out a way to make an excuse to charge even more because it's 3 figures in one, much like how they did with Rat Trap. Well, Rat Trap was actually a cheaper $5 figure and Cheetor was a $10 figure, but they managed to both charge them as the same price point today. So I could see them maybe even asking a little more because it's a combiner and everything. And I would kind of hope that they do it because those originals were plagued with all kinds of problems. Magnaboss had GPS issues, tons of brown plastic syndrome and gold plastic syndrome going on where things would break. And Tripredacus, it's the other problem, clear plastic issues, where Cicada Con, his little missile weapon wing things there, those break. Those are very fragile, the clear plastic. So both of those, when I encounter those in the secondary market, they have a lot of very common broken areas. A complete Magnaboss today in the secondary market, the original one, is between $100 and $120 USD easily because of his GPS problems. To have a minty nice one 100 to 125 easily, actually, now that I think about it. Like, and Tripredacus, man, him 120 to 140 because he was also technically a show appearing character. So both of them go for easily a big chunk of money. So even if the reissue happens and they ask that inflated price, it still will be cheaper than what we have in the secondary market, and hopefully will be done in way better plastic that's more favorable to long-term preservation and no GPS or clear plastic issues. That's what I'm hoping. And I hope they change it up a little bit more. You ask also, like, what's a good way to get vintage Beast Wars stuff that's, what's the cheapest way? Conventions, you got to really hope that you could find them for a good, decent price at conventions. And eBay is always a good measuring stick of value in the secondary market. How not to get scammed? Well, I'm glad you asked that. Like, how do you not get scammed? How do you know what's different? This line has been, when it first was created, this Beast Wars reissue line, there was an attempt to make them different from their original counterparts. And I appreciated that. That way there would be no, scammy stuff going on behind the scenes. Someone's, selling a loose rat trap and saying it's the original. If you know the differences, you won't fall for it. I understand when you're in a convention, the bad lighting that most of these conventions have, the orange lighting or whatever, you might not be able to compare and contrast or know the hues of certain colors or stuff. So I'm going to explain what are the major differences to look for that regardless of any opportunity, you'll be able to really tell right off the bat if it's fake or not, instead of having like, I have to have the original Cheetor in my hand side by side to know the difference. So we'll start with the 2021 guys, Rat Trap and Cheetor. Those were their, quote, deluxe classes. That's what they called them megas, which is even more confusing because mega class is a whole other thing in Beast Wars. But I'll call them the deluxe class because that's what the card back they were going for. They were both charged at the same price, regardless of the fact if Rat Trap was a basic and Cheetor was a mega. $22.97 was the MSRP with Walmart. Originally, Rat Trap was $5 and Cheetor was $10 back in '95. How do you know the differences between these two? Well, Rat Trap, his thing was the reissue has black eyes. All the other stuff, the hues, the colors, the gray is a little different, the teal's a little different. Yeah, those are two, but the big thing that you just need to know is original Rat Trap didn't have black eyes. This one did. Original Rat Trap had like an orangey yellow. This has black eyes. That's all you need to know. Anything else, yeah, there is other things, but that's the quick, one-shot, boom, easiest way to tell. With Cheetor, so there's different versions of Cheetor that got reissued. There was blue eyes. There was, not reissued, but original version had blue eyes. Then there was red eyes. Then there was green eyes. And then this reissue also has green eyes. But again, there's different hues of plastic. So you could say, well, there's the different hues you could tell. Yeah, but when you're in a convention and you're staring at the figure and it's bad lighting and the guy behind the table is staring a hole through you because he thinks you're going to steal it, how do you know right away there and then? Well, if you see a Cheetor that's a reissue and you think it's the reissue, and you're not sure, and it has green eyes on the cheetah mode, the cheetah head, just look at the head, the robot mode head. If the robot mode head also has green eyes, it's the original 1997 green eye Cheetor. If the robot mode head has red eyes or that reddish orange eyes, then it's the reissue from 2021. Very simple. Just that's the easiest way to tell. All the other idiosyncrasies, sure, those are there too, but that's the quick, easy way. Optimus Primal. Same thing. There's different, hues. And again, Optimus Primal and Megatron in 2021, they were the, quote, ultra class. Original MSRP back in the day was $20, $19.99. Now they're asking $50 for these guys. So Optimus Primal, how do you tell the difference with him? Yeah, there's different hues of the color of the weapons and everything like that. Easiest way to tell, just look at his matrix sculpt in his chest. And I know it's not really called that, but that's just, retroactively what we call it today because of how it looks. The reissue has no paint inside it. The original version had red paint on the inside of the sculpt. The reissue didn't. So that's the easiest way to tell between the two. With Megatron is kind of the same story where they removed paint from the figure. How do you tell the difference? Yeah, of course, there's different hues of purple in the Dino mode between the two, but when you have that one figure alone and nothing to compare it to, you might not be able to tell the hue of the purple and, again, the lighting and the con and everything. But all you have to do is look at his robot mode head. The robot mode head on the reissue has no paint on it. It's completely black. The Original version had silver on it. So right away, all those paint apps are missing. Easiest way to tell with that one. Easiest way. Now we get into Scorponok. Scorponok came out, and he's a super easy one to tell. Very, very easy to tell. All you have to do is, and again, he was the original Mega class back in the day. That's what Megas were. They were called that. Original MSRP $14.99. They asked Scorponok for Walmart in retail $41.97. Almost like, geez, a lot of money. That one's a big jump up. But hey, that's what they want to ask for these reissues with the modern plastic. So be it. But this one here is super easy to tell because the original Scorponok toy was all black, and this one uses a light gray that kind of tries to mimic what the Japanese version did. There still is differences between them, but I doubt anyone's going to try to pass off this is the Japanese version. This is definitely like an easy one to tell for sure, 100%. And it's just, if it's light gray, it's that reissue. If it's all black, it's the original. Very simple on that one. Then we get into the majority of 2022 with their deluxes. And this is when now Hasbro's trying to almost mimic what the original product was. And this is where it gets a little dangerous. This is where people might try to be scummy. And so we're going to try to point out as best we can how to find these tells, and that's that. Tigatron is a difficult one right off the bat because he really looks a lot like his original Japanese version. Now, obviously, the original American version had a cream color, so you're not going to mix that up from this reissue. But this reissue is trying to look like the Japanese version, which had a very vibrant white. So what's the difference between the Japanese version and this one? Honestly, comparing it myself, looking at them deeply, and I own both of them, all I could see is the eye lining around the tiger head, and I'm going to post it on the screen with some circles around it and everything to kind of make sense of it. It's just the eye lining around the tiger head is a little thinner on the original Japanese version. It's much thicker on the reissue. Otherwise, it's really tough to tell with that one. So be careful and be warned when you're picking up a Tigatron. So if someone says that, oh, it's the original Japanese version, be a little skeptical because there's going to probably be a lot of those Tigatron reissues out there in the market, especially considering it went on sale too at one point, as a lot of these did. So keep that in mind. Dangerous territory there. When we get into Pterosaur, the only way to tell is the front of his fists in his robot mode have no paint on them at all. The rest of the fist has the purple paint on it, but for some reason the front of the fists did not have any paint on it. So if you see a loose Pterosaur and someone's trying to say, hey, it's the original one, just look for the front of the fists. If it's missing the paint, we know that what's up, plain and simple. Now we get into ones that are really worrisome, and I hope that we could maybe figure something out better in the future. Wolfang and Canine. They almost look exactly the same as their original counterparts. I do not have Wolfang or Canine, the reissues right now. I own the originals. I've said many times on the live streams and everything how great those figures are. And well, unfortunately, I can't tell you right now. It looks like they're exactly the same. I've seen photos. I've done side-by-side comparisons. I don't see paint missing. Comment below if you have both versions and you see a difference. If it's a hue, then it's still not going to be very helpful because then you won't be able to know unless you have both next to each other. So is there something? Is there a stamp? Is there an EN code stamp on it or something? There's got to be something that could tell people what is the difference between an original Wolfang and Canine and these reissues. So that one so far right now, we don't have anything. Now here's one where it was the conversation because Retracts also recently came out in the reissue line. And I was talking with Ant from tfu.info and trying to get some information. Hey, what's different about this one this time around? Because I document all of this. And he pointed out how, right away in the center of the figure, two of his little, I guess we'll call them extra legs are missing from the pill bug in the reissue. So right away, if you see a reissue version in the wild and it's missing those two little legs in the middle, and again, I'll circle them in the image here, right away you have the reissue. You can't, where if the original will have the extras, and well, then you'll know you have the extra Retracts. I don't know why anyone would try to scam someone out of a Retracts figure. It was voted one of the worst Transformer toys of all time back in the day. But I mean, still, you never know. There's a lot of scummy people out there. Another way also to tell, too, is his front antlers are actually installed backwards, but that's something that you might not pay attention to. So just look for those two little missing legs in the center area there with retracts. That's the easiest way. And the last ones are Cyber Shark and Iguanus. Cyber Shark is kind of the same story. It's hues. It's really hard to tell, much like in the case of K9 and Wolfang. It's really tough to tell. There's nothing that's a really big giveaway, unfortunately. If there's something I missed, please tell me. I have not picked up Cyber Shark, the new one, myself. I only own the original. So if there is something that's a real major way to tell, please comment it below, outside of just like, oh, the hue is slightly different, because that's always tough to tell people. That's always subjective. And same thing, in 2023, we're going to have Iguanus. We've already talked about it on the podcast recently. And right now, from the images I've seen online, which are stock images, which I never trust the stock images for these reissues, because already in the past, they've used different images than what the final product is in terms of colors and stuff. So even Pterosaur, like they showed full fists that were painted, and then the actual product itself didn't have that. So Iguanus right now, we've seen some images. They're stock images. I don't know if it's legitimate of how the product looks like, but from what it looks like thus far, it looks like a one-to-one like the original. So we might have another problem with that one too. So we'll see. We'll see. And I mean, there's still, supposedly we're supposed to get Tarantulas at some point too in the reissue line and others, but it is pretty dicey. It is pretty dicey right now, but those are the ones that are available. That's how you could try to figure out if you have the original or not, and someone tries to, someone's going to try to pull something. You give it enough time, and a lot of these guys are going to end up in the secondary market. There's going to be a lot of people that bought them really cheap because they did go up on clearance, and then they're going to be opened up, and then they're going to be in the secondary market, and then people are going to try to pass these off as the originals. I saw it like crazy back in the day. When Transformers got really huge after the Michael Bay movies and stuff, there was a lot of people trying to pass off the reissues as the originals because the reissues had a good solid 7 years up to that point to get into the secondary market and mix it up a little bit. They kind of started, and I mean the Western reissues, when Toys R Us started really carrying them. From 2001 to 2007, there was tons of stuff put out there of the Autobot cars and Decepticons, and then you'd have people that are saying like, oh yeah, this is totally the original, and let's not even talk about bootlegs and people trying to sell you a Constructicon bootleg as the original. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on out there. So just keep that in mind, always be careful, and I hope that this taught you a little something to protect yourself if you're looking to buy some original vintage Beast Wars and people are trying to sell you something that isn't the case. So I hope you learned something. Again, I hope the Twins Corner also learned something. And if you want to learn more and you want to help support the podcast, again, patreon.com/Protoban, or check the pinned comment or the description below. Support the podcast. Let us know we're doing a half-decent job. And again, rock out with the robots in disguise, and I'll talk to you again later today.